Good morning, my peeps. My just saying peeps. Here we are. I'm going to try something different today. I know a lot of people don't like long videos. I don't even like watching long videos, but I do feel like I need to talk about this. So we're going to try a little something different. I'm going to start a new series or a new process. I'm trying to post a little more often. I'm going to do 5 minutes of discussion on something, somewhere, somehow. We're going to try to keep it in 5 minutes or less. Okay, that doesn't include this introduction because we're going to talk about this process. So my new format is going to basically be picking a topic, whether that's political, environmental, or political, religious, whatever it happens to be, whatever topic I pick, and we're going to take 5 minutes to discuss it. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes of why I think it's either debunked, or I can either debunk it or I'll support it. So here it is. Today we're going to talk about climate change. Wow, surprise, right? One of the key democratic platforms is climate change. And so, because of these, what I think of as ridiculous and extreme platform shifts for the Democratic Party, I'm going to talk about it a little bit. So, here we go. We're fixing to start this clock and we'll get going now. We're going to talk about the climate change. So, what are they doing? They're jumping on board with this climate change and they're taking it to the extreme. What used to be considered global warming is now relabeled climate change. And it's called relabeled climate change because there's no such thing as global warming. We notice that in some places it's getting cooler, in some places it's getting warmer, and they can't really say global warming when things really aren't warming up all over the world. There are places where it's warming up, and there are places where temperatures are increasing, but there are also places where temperatures are decreasing. So we've changed the terminology to climate change. That should be your first and foremost clue that this is kind of a sham or that it's a mode of them gaining power and taxation. The second thing that we're going to talk about is the science or evolution of climate. So, as Democrats, they believe heavily in science. They don't believe in God or creation in most cases. In most cases, they will focus heavily on the science behind things, and they will tout that scientists support climate change. Well, of course, they're going to support climate change with evolution. However, the funny thing about science and the theory of evolution is that if that is your basis for belief, which I'm not saying it's mine because it really is not, but if that is your basis for belief, is this evolutionary science process over millions of years, then you also have to understand and believe that evolution debunks climate change. It really debunks humanity being a influencer in climate change. So let me explain. By the theory of evolution, you had this ball of matter which eventually got hot and moist and gathered enough materials that the climate was hot and warm and moist and very conducive to the creation of single-celled life, which eventually slowly developed into something more like human beings. But in this, you have a hot, humid climate in this primordial soup, which developed into life. That eventually developed mammals, and we went through what they call an ice age. There's plenty of evidence to support, according to science, that there was an ice age, and the temperature throughout the globe, throughout the world, dropped drastically down below to temperatures that which killed off many of the species in the world, according to evolutionary science. That's the reason we don't have dinosaurs today. And in this process, mammals managed to survive this cyclical drop in temperature, which we call ice age. And then things over time, over hundreds of thousands or millions of years, if you're a scientist or you believe in this kind of science, over that long period of time, things started to change. Things started to warm up. Those global glaciers and those global ice structures have started to recede. They melted off. They started to pour their water into the oceans, carrying sediments down into the ocean, causing the salt. And in that process, we have lakes, we have rivers, we have this running off of water, and you have these caps on the poles which have stayed frozen because those are the colder regions. And while this center ring around us, which we call the equator, is the warmer region of the globe. And slowly but surely, those caps have receded, filling our oceans and our lakes. That process, ladies and gentlemen, happened entirely absent of human influence, entirely absent, according to science, of fossil fuels being used. Hence the reason they're fossil fuels. These are fuels which supposedly come from those byproducts of those living organisms which died years ago and became carbon-based organisms, which died and became oil eventually. Likewise, we never had Never had fossil fuels burning. We never had factories. We never had cars. We never had, we had some minor fires for people to cook with, but for the most part, the environment was absent of that human influence of fossil fuels burning and carbon emissions. And yet, the world made this progressive transition between hot to very cold to very hot again. And we're slowly progressing up, continually getting hotter. However, however, uh, that natural ebb and flow, which is based in evolutionary science, which you liberals believe in, totally refutes the human aspect of it. Now, here's where I go with this. I speculate because I do believe that there is some truth to science. Science helps us understand God, helps us understand the world around us in some ways, helps open our eyes to things that we previously didn't see or know. So here's what I speculate. I speculate that we have this giant magnetic ball, which is creating a ton of heat through fusion and this energy, and it heats our world and it heats the glow or the worlds around us in our solar system. But that same ball, which keeps us in a rotational pattern around it and holds us in that pattern, is also pulling us. It is pulling us closer and closer and closer, little by little, in a spiraling motion towards the center. Hence the reason we're getting warmer. It's also the same reason that the poles in the world have shifted. Science has indicated that there's been a shift in the poles, and as these poles shift, it would stand to reason that that hot equator, which we spin on those poles, that hot equator, which is turning and moving, is now putting the hottest part of the world in different regions. Regions that were once cold, as this equator tilts, are now getting warmer. And those regions which were warmer, as this equator tilts, are now getting cooler. Stands to reason, right? Basic mechanics, basic physics, basic science, which you say you believe so heavily in, and the evolutionary science would indicate that as these poles shift and as things move, so too does the climate with it. So if you believe in all this, if you believe in science, you believe that science is the everything and all thing, which is ridiculous, and refer eugenics, by the way, another ridiculous science. But if you believe that, we're all doomed regardless because these natural cycles are outside of our control and we have zero influence on them. So if they are doomed, give up the taxation and control and manipulation, which is being perpetuated through this guise of climate change. Now, I apologize, I did go a little bit over, but until next time, please consider climate change as the debunked myth of control and manipulation that it is. Thanks, and until next time, I'm just saying.